Start by using these motif drawings to make a pattern croquis. So imagine that I drew these and now I want to start making a pattern. Before I can make a pattern, I have to figure out how all these drawings are going to start to work together. So that's going to be the first part of this video. So in order to do this, I'm going to make my canvas size much bigger so I have plenty of room to develop my idea. And I probably should, just for the sake of this video, shrink everything down so I don't crash. I'll do that now. So I'm basically taking all of these marigold elements and putting them into a configuration that feels like the flow and direction of the pattern. So I'll start out here by just attaching a leaf to this flower, and I'm going to merge them together because I'm going to be working kind of quickly, and I'll put this one over here and merge these together so it looks a little bit more like the flowers would. Merging those together. And I'm going to work with these three motifs and start figuring out, like, how are they all going to fit together as a pattern. And you can rotate and flip and duplicate things and all of that. I'm trying to keep it simple for the video, but I don't want you to stop in this stage because you don't see me doing it. I do think you might want to make some editing decisions with your own artwork. But I'm going to take all of these and I'm going to merge them together. And by having this pattern croquis, what I can see is the configuration of the marigold flowers in relationship to each other. So the spacing is here, the scale is here, like everything I need to know about my larger pattern is indicated here. So the next stage in the video is going to be turning this pattern croquis into a straight repeat. So I'm going to start out by, make sure there's enough space on my screen for this. I'm going to start out by putting the artwork in the upper left-hand corner, and then I'm going to duplicate that artwork and put it right below. So making a straight repeat means lining things up straight. So the best way to do that is by working along the edge of the margin so you know when something is straight. So in order to duplicate this quickly, I can use the move tool and hold down the option key and get that double arrow and just click and drag. You can also just duplicate the layer if that is easier. And again, I'm going to space it in a way that makes it feel like the pattern should. If I put it here, then it's basically saying it's a clump of flowers and a clump of flowers. Here obviously is going to get too chaotic, but this feels like the same spacing that I've established here. So I'm going to merge these two layers together, and I'm actually going to duplicate this because I want to do some things that might cut off the text that I set up for this video, so ignore that duplication. So now what I want to do is extract my repeat. So the vertical repeat would be from something that I identify here in the first quarter of the artwork, and then the exact same thing down here. So in order to perfectly select that area, if you can't see exactly where to select it, you can do something called a floating selection, which means taking a selection from the guide to the edge, putting it on its own layer, and then finding it again down here so I can find exactly where the repeat would end, and put another guide down. Okay, so that's a little trick that I use if I can't find the end of the repeat, which usually happens when it's a texture, but sometimes can happen when it's a really complicated pattern. So once I've done that, I can take this area from between the guides and crop it, because that is an exact repeat vertically. So I'll show you how I know. I move it here and duplicate it to check it. You can see it repeats. Whoops, perfectly. So that means this section is going to repeat vertically. Now if I want to do the side repeat, I would duplicate it sideways, and I hope you can see what's going to happen here is there's going to be a gap, and that gap is going to show up in the pattern as a blank space that doesn't make any sense. So what I would need to do here is I would need to put something in here, and usually what I would want to put in here is something that feels like the rest of the pattern so it doesn't just stick out. I'm going to go back to my other file so I can just grab a section of something to put in there, and I'm going to take this flower and paste it in. So instead of putting it here, which is going to make it really obvious, I'm going to flip it so it goes the other direction, and then maybe rescale it so it's not so obviously the exact same flower. And I can move that over here. And then I'm going to go back to that original artwork, and I'm going to find something else to add in there so it feels like it's more organic than just stamping the same things over and over again. So paste that in here, maybe place it behind. I think that extra flower is unnecessary, so I'm going to get rid of it. And, you know, I'm doing it fast and messy for this video, but hopefully you can understand how cutting and pasting would help me figure out how to add another motif in there, or maybe you start with your original drawing and go back and make something that makes sense. So this is not my finest work, but you get the idea how it would fit in there. And so it doesn't feel like it's out of place. Something like that. It'll have to do from this video. You can watch me do this all day and never make it too much better than that. All right, I promise you I'm going to stop just because I don't want the video to be too long. There we go. All right, we'll have to do something like that. So you get the idea that I'm actually filling in that empty spot with something that feels like it belongs in the pattern. And I can't stop myself, y'all. Hold on. All right, so sort of. I wish I would go into iMovie and edit this out, but I'm definitely not going to because the struggle is real. Okay, so I'm going to have to call that. And after I filled in that gap, I would merge these layers together and then find the horizontal repeat. So again, I would put a guide down in that first quarter of the artwork and then copy and paste this over so that I can see where the exact repeat would need to end. I'm using the arrows on the keyboard to nudge it into place, and you can see that that's the end of the repeat, and then I get rid of that little floating bit. You don't need to do that if you can see it perfectly. So now I'm going to select this, image, crop, and this design is now in a straight repeat. And I'm going to test it by making the canvas size 200%. And duplicating the repeat to see if it tiles properly. And it does. Even my terrible little job patching it up looks pretty good. So this would be my final repeat in a straight repeat. Now, we talked a little bit about doing half drop repeats, and that's why I duplicated this so I can go back to this version and do a half drop repeat. So a half drop repeat starts out the same way a straight repeat does, but instead of going directly across from it, I go halfway down. I'm going to duplicate this again so I can go back to my video and say, this is us turning a pattern croquis into a half drop repeat. So you get to the same place, and instead of going across, you go halfway down. So the same idea where I would crop it perfectly so that it begins and ends in the same place. So that leaf is my marker. Again, if you can see where it begins and ends, you don't have to use that extra floating selection tool. I can see where it begins and ends. And then I would select that area and crop it. And as I said, instead of going directly across like I did before, I'm going to go across and halfway down. And luckily Photoshop will snap it into place so that I don't have to worry about it. Am I perfectly halfway down? And then I go here, and you'll see it actually fits together even though it's halfway down. So I'm going to merge those two layers together, and then I'm going to use my arrows on the keyboard to move it into place. And again, you might end up having to like rearrange things a little bit. For me, I feel like I'm just going to rearrange the layer order so that the leaves are behind the flowers, and then maybe just take these leaves and we'll see what happens if I scooch them down a little instead of having them go under that leaf. So something like that might make a little bit more sense. I'm not going down the rabbit hole again of cleaning this up, but it does need a little cleaning up. So something like that would help, and I can then merge these layers together and then find the repeat again. So I'm going to start by looking right at this intersection of this leaf. That's my beginning point. And then I'm going to find that same leaf again. It won't be across, it'll be across and down. This is the same leaf. And now I'm going to crop this. I'm going to make my canvas size 200%. And I'm going to check my repeat. And in checking my repeat, I do have to remember it's in a half drop, so I'm going up and down. Looks perfect. And now I'm going to check this as a straight repeat. So all half drop repeats, when you step them out to the side, become a straight repeat. So it's a straight repeat that contains this half drop pattern. And that is what I want to work with for screen printing. I don't want to be moving my screen halfway down when I'm trying to print. So hopefully that makes sense. My canvas size now is, let's see, I'll take this artwork and put it on its own layer. And then my canvas size will be 200% by 200%. You'll notice I'm keeping the artwork in the upper left-hand corner so I can just move it into the corners. And this is my half drop repeat, which I must say looks pretty good. This is the straight repeat, looks good. This is the half drop repeat, looks good. So I'm going to merge these together, and at this point we can go with either one of them to the next part of the tutorial, which is scaling and stepping out the repeat to your screen size. So in order to screen print this, I need to fit it onto my screen and not leave a lot of empty space or cut any of the design off. So I was randomly working with the scale that I'm working with, so I'm not really, I can't tell you what's going to happen for you, and that's why it's like scaling and or stepping it out. You can only work with what you have. So I think I'm going to work with the easier one for this. I think the easier one has a little bit more spacing, but either one of them would have worked. So currently I have 2 repeats by 2 repeats here with my straight repeat, and the whole thing is about 8.5 inches. I think I told you guys that you could fit up to 16 inches wide and was it 21 inches long? So I'm just going to check this right now and say what would it look like if the canvas size was 16 inches wide and 21 inches high? How much space would be left over here? It's a lot of empty space to not be able to print. So the question becomes, what's the scale that I'm working at? If you know that this is the scale that you want, you have to step it out. If you're thinking, I'm not really sure about scale, you should get sure about the scale before you're at this stage. And you should say, like, each one of these flowers I want to be 4 inches, and therefore the artwork has to be this size, and I printed it out and checked it and da-da-da. So that's going to be on you. But for me, what I'm going to say is, I'm going to keep the artwork small and step it out. The other one, I'll keep the artwork stepped out and scale it. So we'll do 2 versions. So in this one, I'm going to bring it out to the corner and duplicate it. Now, if I were to work with it this way, you can see by that blue line on my screen that I have cut off my repeat. Luckily, this chunk of pattern that I have contains 2 repeats. So it's basically telling me that 1, 2, 3 repeats will fit. 4 will get cut off. So what I can do is step it out to those 3 and then know that I'm going to be getting rid of a bunch of this stuff over here. Like, I can even roughly show you, I'm definitely getting rid of a bunch of this stuff here. And then I'm going to go vertically. So I'm going to step it out and say, yep, it definitely cut some off at the bottom. So I'm going to have 1, 2, 3. I don't think I can have 4. So I have to do 3 by 3 repeats, and that's what's going to fit on my screen. So now I'm going to extract pattern, and while doing it, I'm going to put in what's called our jog line. So my trick for doing this is usually to make a clean layer and use a bright color and a pen, a pencil tool, and draw out where I'm going to keep. So I'm basically saying I'm going to keep this whole flower. There's no point in keeping this, it's cut off, this one here. So I'm going to keep this whole flower, and I'm not drawing on my artwork, so I don't have to worry about like really avoiding it. I'm just trying to give you guys a good sense. I'm going to keep this one. There's no point in keeping this because I don't want this marigold and this marigold to repeat twice. I want it to end before I get to the beginning marigold. Okay, so I'm going to keep that, and I'm going to go down here. Again, I'm keeping this one because this one's basically cut off. And I could go in and out of there, and it should give you a sense of how many I can keep. Keeping this one, and by drawing directly on the screen, you don't get confused when you're like cutting it out and accidentally cut something away. You can really see like this goes up here and it fits where that is. So I'm gonna keep going up and down. You'll notice I'm working in repeat, so I'm going up and down in the same place throughout the repeat. And then I believe I can go up here. So down here, and this is creating that puzzle piece I'm going to need for the jog line. Okay, so if I were to fill this with red and move it, it would probably, yeah, it's going to fit together there as a puzzle piece. It's going to fit together here as a puzzle piece, and it kind of shows you, yep, I've gotten everything. There's no flower sitting out that I haven't included in my repeat. So now you get to the work of like getting rid of the motifs that you don't need. So this is where I would go in and just select things and delete them away. And this is a little bit tedious, so let me see if I can make quick work of it. Actually, a fast way to do it would be to go to that red line because it's contained. Select just outside of the red line. And, sorry, get rid of anything outside the red line, and hopefully I didn't cut off any of my flowers. So I just now have to go in and get those little bits and pieces away. So whatever shortcut you can think of is up to you. going in there and doing it. And I wouldn't cut and paste a lot at this point because not lining it up is going to cause you problems, and cutting and pasting is, it's like little bit of a minefield for not lining things up unless you're really clear and use guides. So this is fine. And this selecting the repeat thing will work no matter what type of pattern is. The only complication is if you don't have a lot of space between motifs, you have to really figure out how to cut between it without creating another problem. So I'll do that in the next section. So I've gotten rid of this. So this is my artwork. I know that it fits into the screen size. I know that it is multiple repeats in here that connects. Thing that I want to show you is doing a jog line on artwork like this and scaling it up instead of just stepping it out. So it's already stepped out 2 by 2. I'm going to do the same thing where I do the canvas size to 16 by 21 and see what we're dealing with here. A lot of extra space. Because I'm just showing you in this video, I'm just going to scale it randomly, but I'm not going to scale it so big that I cut anything off without making a decision. So let's say I wanted to scale it up really tall because I want these big flowers there. Obviously, I'm keeping the vertical repeat, so that's fine, but look, I'm losing the side-by-side repeat unless I cut stuff away. So you can see this flower and this flower. Well, maybe I only keep 1 repeat side by side and 2 repeats vertically. So let me do that again. I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard, and I'm going to have to take the flowers sections at here and bring it up there so that I don't lose any of my artwork in the jog line. So I have a little extra than 2 repeats there, and I'm going to cut through using my jog line technique. I'm going to cut through and decide where the jog line goes. So I'm going to go in here, just deciding, not actually cutting yet. And then I'm going to go, actually think, I'm going to go here to here, and then down here, over here. And I do not need this. This is not coming with me because I'm only doing 1 horizontal repeat. So I can stop there. And I'll notice I'm trying to do a jog line through the spaces, but there aren't a ton of spaces here. So I have to strategically go through my own artwork in a way that feels like hard to watch, but that's how it is when there's no obvious gaps in the artwork. So I'm going to cut through here, 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 all the way down. And then it looks like I could go across here because based on what I'm trying to keep here. Let me keep this guy. I'm not worried about. No, I can keep this guy. And I can keep that guy. So it's a little bit trickier than, okay, so this is here. I'm using this as an identifier, and I'm saying, okay, I want to keep this. I definitely did the wrong section over here, so ignore that. I'm looking for that same repeat here. Yep, got it. I don't want to have 2 of the exact same flowers butting up against each other. So I wish I could say this is like something that's easy on the first try. It is not. And I feel like that is part of the process of learning. So I have no apologies about that. Do I have this flower here? I think I may have accidentally missed something. And this is why this red line idea is so much better than directly cutting into it because that can be very confusing. Yeah, it looks like I got it. So this is out, which means this is in, and then we would cut it there. So you can see inside of here oops, close the gap on this. There it is. You can see inside of there the whole pattern happening twice. So I'll go in here and you can see. I'm just going to test it quickly. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again, but I'm going to go here, and will it repeat there? Yes, it will. And I haven't repeated anything. So my jogline cut would have to be a lot better than that, but you get the idea. And would it repeat here and here? Yes, it would. So it's all about cutting that puzzle piece out and using that as your pattern repeat. So the last thing to do is to put the registration marks on the file. So I'm going to go back to my other file, and I'm going to figure out the exact width of the repeat, and I'm going to put guides down to show myself exactly where that repeat begins and ends. So I've cut the design out. I'm going to put guidelines at the upper left-hand corner so I can see the exact repeat, and I'm going to move the artwork over until it connects in the right spot, which is right here, and put another guide down. So this repeat to that repeat went on the print table, and then this one here as well, making sure I line it up properly. And say this is that repeat. And now I know my repeat size because I measured it manually to see exactly what it is. So now I know with these guides that that's where the registration marks needs to go. So obviously if I put registration marks on my screen and I put it on top of the artwork, I'm making things worse. So instead of putting them on the same layer, I'm going to draw them in. So I can just draw one here, one here, and use that same motif sorry. I'm going to take this over and place it here, and then take them both over and place them at the bottom, right on the registration marks. So I have them, and now in order to avoid putting them directly on the artwork, I can scooch them over, but their relationship to each other is still correct. So what I'm trying to do is find the spot where I can put them down without having them fall on the artwork, but their distance is the same. So that's where I'm going to put them, burn them on the artwork on my screen, and then use it to help me measure my print. And once I figured out measuring my print, then I can close up those holes on my screen. So those are the registration marks. That was probably a very long video. I might cut it up, I might not, and please send me any questions you might have.